Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. So today I have my update for my palette rotation series. So if you haven't seen, I do have a playlist for this project if you are interested in checking that out. I go over more detail definitely in the first videos of this series, but basically I choose 5 random palettes from my collection to use for the month. My goal is just to use them each one time for a full everyday look for myself, and I just set this as a super simple goal just to get some use out of palettes that I might not reach for. So I did use each of these palettes once. These are my ones that were in for November. So I will go ahead and talk about these in a minute. But first, I like to kind of just talk about some general palette usage from my collection. So we will jump into that first. So this past month, I used a total of 25 of my palettes out of, I think I'm somewhere around 75. I guess I don't really know the actual number of my palettes in my collection, but it's somewhere around the 70-75 mark. So this month wasn't too great. There were definitely days that I wasn't wearing makeup or I was just focusing on different products in my collection, so I didn't get a ton of use. I'm usually over 30 for the month, but just 25 this month, and I didn't really have a most used palette. I used each of them maybe like once or twice, so not great on the overall palette usage, but I did hit 2 pans this month, and I've said before 2 pans a month was kind of my goal for this year, so I did complete that this last month. So my first pan comes from my Wet n Wild Not a Basic Peach palette. So I currently now have 3 pans in this palette, and the most recent one I hit was in this shade right here. I hope you guys can see it. It is a little bit of a smaller pan just because I was using a smaller brush. This was mostly an inner corner shade for myself, so I used a pretty small brush to just pop it in the inner corner. Sometimes I used it as a lid shade, but it's just a super easy everyday shade for me to use, so that makes my 3rd pan in this palette, which is super exciting. And then my next pan comes from my Wet n Wild Rosé in the Air palette, and if you didn't see my last update, I did roll this palette into my rotation, and I had mentioned that one of my side goals, other than using it just the one time for the look, was going to be to hit pan on a shade in here, and that is this 5th shade right up here. So as you can see, I now only have 2 shades left to hit pan on in this palette, which is super exciting. But this shade was just a really nice lid shade. I used it kind of in my outer corner mostly, and sometimes I packed it all over the lid when I use this shade, but I really do love this palette. As you can tell, I've used it quite a bit. So I'm really happy to have another pan in this palette, and I'm one step closer to getting this palette 100% panned. So that makes for a total of 52 pans out of 975 shades in my collection, which is a total of 5.33%. So I am pretty happy with that number. It is going up as I continue to hit more pans, and I haven't brought a new palette into my collection in at least a couple months, which is actually kind of surprising to me because last year and the beginning of this year I was bringing in like at least one palette a month, so I've definitely slowed down on that. So this number is growing. It's still not too big, obviously. 5.33% isn't great, but I am happy that we are starting to increase that number. Alright, so next we will talk about the looks that I created with the palettes that were in my rotation this month. So I'm going to start with my Milani Soft and Sultry. This was the first one that I reached for this month. So here is what it looks like on the inside, and I will of course insert a picture of the look that I created. So for this look, I used the shade Soft Touch through my crease and brought that onto my lower lash line. Then I used this shade Smokin' Hot to deepen up the crease into my outer corner. I packed the shade Foxy Lady on the lid and then put Diamonds and Pearls in the inner corner and brought that on to kind of the first third of the lid. And this was just a super simple everyday look for me, very neutral, but I really did enjoy how it turned out. This is just the perfect palette for easy, neutral looks. So that is why I'm so happy to have this one in my collection, and I'm happy to have gotten a good use out of it this last month. Alright, next we will talk about my Rosé in the Air palette and the look that I created with this one. So I will go ahead and insert that picture. So for this look, I started with this darker purple tone shade, packed it all over my lid and blended it up into my crease. And then I took this lighter purple shade and blended out the crease, as well as blending it out with this matte cream shade. And I kind of repeated those steps on the lower lash line. And then I packed this shimmer shade all over the lid, and that is how I hit pan on this shade. And then I put the gold shimmer in my inner corner, and I really did enjoy how this one turned out as well. I was really happy to get a good use out of this shade to hit pan on it, and I did pack it all over my lid on both eyes, so it was a pretty large amount of product that I used in order to hit pan on it this past month. So yeah, that was this look. Next up, we will talk about my Shared Planet Tiger palette. So here is this one, and I will insert a picture of the look that I created this past month with this palette. So for this look, I used the shade Whiskers through my crease and then blended it out with Siberian. I packed Bangle all over the lid, and that is a beautiful lid shade. And then I put Paw Print in the center of the lid, just tapped it over Bangle. And then I used the shade Stripes along my lower lash line and kind of winged it out. And then I did use a little bit of Lush to smudge along the lower lash line as well. And then put Roar in my inner corner. And once again, I really liked how this look came out. It's just a nice everyday look. I am not great at doing like this reverse liner situation. I don't know exactly what it's called, but doing it along the lower lash line instead of the upper lash line. I don't think it turned out the absolute best. I think in person it looked better than the picture that I got of it, so I was pretty happy with it in person, but I don't think it captured as well on camera. But overall, I am super happy with how this look came out, and I absolutely adore this palette, so I was really happy to get another good use out of it. Alright, next up we will talk about my beautiful Shellz Karma Chameleon quad. This is the Iris quad. So here is what this one looks like, and I always like to mention with this brand I do have an affiliate link and a discount code with them. It is linked in my description box if you are interested. I do earn a small commission if you use it, which I would really appreciate, but no pressure. So I will insert a picture of the look that I created this past month with this palette. So I'm really happy I got to use this palette this last month. I think this look turned out really beautifully, and it definitely makes it look like more work went into the look than it actually did, just with the nature of the duochrome shade, and I think it just turned out really nice. And then last but not least is my Huda Beauty Desert Dusk palette. So I will insert a picture of the look that I created with this one. I don't remember exactly what I did for this one, but I think I can figure it out. So I know I put Eden through the crease and blended that with Musk a little bit to kind of tone down the orangey color, and then probably blended it out with Desert Sand. And then I used this darker brown over here to deepen up the crease. And then, if I remember correctly, I put Celestial all over the lid. And then I think I did Nefertiti, or it might have been Cashmere. I think I might have put Cashmere in kind of the first third of the lid and maybe Nefertiti in the inner corner. Some combination of those shades. I have been getting better at writing down what I do for my looks, but I did not record this one, so it was something along those lines, just a super simple everyday look once again, and I really do like how this turned out. This surprisingly isn't a palette that I reach for all that often, as much as I do like it, and it was on my wish list for quite a while, but it's just not one that I reach for over some of the other palettes, so I was really happy it got brought in this past month because it just reminded me to use it and reminded me how much I actually do enjoy this palette. So those are the 5 looks that I created with my 5 palettes for November. Let me know which of the looks was your favorite, and be sure to stay tuned to see which palettes I roll in for December, our final month of the year. So now we will get into rolling in my palettes for December. I cannot believe that it's already going to be December. Today, it's still a couple weeks away. I'm filming this portion early because I just used my 5th palette to create a look this morning, and I just get really excited about this part of the video, so I like to film it pretty much right after I finish using all 5 of the palettes. I don't start using these next 5 until the next month, but I just like to know what they're going to be and plan ahead. So I'm going to draw in my 5 palettes. So excited. So our first one is going to be my e.l.f. Retro Paradise palette. That is a bit of a summery palette in my opinion, but I still really do love that palette, and that one will be very fun to play with. Maybelline Lemonade Craze, another one I might consider more of a summery palette. My Ulta Slytherin palette, that one's going to be fun. We're getting all the palettes right around the same area on this wheel. There we go, this is opposite. I love this palette. I have been waiting for this one to get rolled into this project. This is my I Heart Revolution Oh the Places You'll Go palette. That one is exciting. And then last up is my Glitter Realm A Whole New World palette. That one's going to be fun as well. So I will go grab this last round of palettes for December and be right back. Alright, so here are my 5 palettes, so I will just run through these really quickly. So up first was my e.l.f. Retro Paradise palette. So here's what this one looks like. It does have a really beautiful color story, and maybe I can reach for some of the blues in here for this more winter time season, but I am definitely excited to pull this out. I really do love this palette. This one was my most used last year, so it's definitely one that I just really love. So this one's exciting. Next up, we have my Maybelline Lemonade Craze palette. So here is what this one looks like on the inside. This is another really beautiful one, super easy to reach for everyday looks. So I don't really see any problem just creating a nice neutral look with this palette. Should be super easy, and I am definitely excited about using this one as well. Next up, we have my Ulta Slytherin palette. So here is this one and the inside. Some very nice colors in here as well. Definitely gonna gravitate towards the shade Moon right here. It's just a beautiful silver shade. So I am sure that one will be incorporated in some way in my look. But I really do love this palette. It's not one that gets a lot of love from me on a daily basis, but I am happy it rolled into this project. Alright, probably the palette I am the most excited for is my Oh the Places You'll Go palette from I Heart Revolution. There is something about this palette that I've just fallen in love with, and I am so happy that it has been brought into this project. This is one, even though it is a little bit more of a springy, summery palette, in my opinion, it's one that I will have absolutely no problem reaching for, just because I do love it so much. It is probably in my top 5 palettes. Just something about this is just absolutely stunning, and I love it. Alright, last but not least is my Glitter Realm A Whole New World palette, another one of my absolute favorites in my collection. So here is what this one looks like on the inside, just lots of beautiful, beautiful colors, and I just absolutely adore this palette. When I first got it, I was just reaching for it non-stop, so I have slowed down a little bit on my usage from this palette, but it is still definitely one of my favorites, and I am so excited to be able to play around with it this next month. So those are my 5 palettes for December. I am so excited, if you could not tell. Quite a few of these palettes are favorites in my collection, so I am just really excited. I think we're ending off the year very strongly with this group, so I'm really excited. Stay tuned to see what looks I create with each of these palettes. Let me know what you thought of November's looks, and be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you did enjoy. Subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future uploads. I update this project typically on the first Tuesday of every month. I might update it a little early, do my finale a little early in December, and then have an intro for January. I'm still kind of trying to figure that out, but definitely stay tuned for that. I also have a playlist for this project that I will link down below if you would like to follow along that way. And with all of that said, I will see you in my next video. Bye!